Hey folks, Catherine here, and today I'd like to continue our conversation about how those of us in the market research and customer insights world need to adapt our career paths for the reality that we now live in a data fluent world. And hopefully, I have done a good job of establishing that we do, in fact, now live in a data fluent world. However, it's interesting to me that there's still a little bit of pushback on this. For example, at every industry conference you go to, you see a session titled Market Research versus Big Data, and it's put like it's an either or thing. But hopefully I've done a good job of showing people that these things are really becoming integrated. It's not an either or thing. Business organizations today are increasingly data driven and customer centric, and they want to harness all types of data in order to achieve that, whether it's big data or small, primary or secondary, whether it's data that is structured or unstructured, right? So there are a lot of different types of data that are out there. So hopefully I've done a good job of establishing that we now do live in a data fluent world and that we just got to get over it, right? We have to adapt our expectations, we have to adapt our career paths, and in some ways, really exciting ways. There are really cool new career opportunities that are coming up as a result of greater integration between what used to be a lot of disparate data silos, right? So some of what's happening is really, really a great opportunity for people in market research and insights. In the unlikely event that I have not yet convinced you that we live in a data fluent world, please check out some of the resources that I've made available, some of the recordings in this series, as well as some other sources. So we've had 4 episodes in this series so far previous to this that have talked about the fact that we live in a data fluent world and have provided data points, proof points, observations, research on how data is becoming more important and how multiple data sources are becoming integrated. In episode 42, I talked about market research versus big data, who's going to own the consultative role. In episode 38, I shared information from an article that was published in the Harvard Business Review by McKinsey, where they put forth this idea that, yeah, we do live in a world where organizations are breaking down data silos, and as a result, according to McKinsey, there's going to be demand for millions of people who are going to be able to be consultative in a data sort of agnostic world, and they call these people translators. There was also episode 18 where I literally talk about what is data fluency. And in episode number 1, I also talked about what it means to be data agnostic, right? Because we do need to be data fluent, but we also need to be data agnostic. We're going to lose credibility if we're always recommending the same data sources and methods to our clients. Clients, business executives, increasingly are aware that they have many different data sources to pick from. And if every time they come to Joe the market researcher is recommending surveys and isn't aware of other types of data sources and methods, Joe the market researcher is going to lose credibility, right? So we need to understand that we live in a data fluent world and we have to be ready for the increasing amount of intersection between market research and people with other types of data specialties, some of which may fall under the broad big data or customer analytics umbrellas. If you still don't believe me, check out a video I did last week. I was interviewed by Bob Lederer from the Research Business Daily Report. He basically let me go on a rant about how there are important career opportunities in a world where all of these silos are breaking down and that we shouldn't be so negative. So it's not about us versus them. Sort of, we're all in this together. And so Bob posted a video of my interview with him where I ranted about that. And you can check that video out on the RBDR channel here on YouTube. And also, if you read Quirk's Marketing Research Review, and if you're in the market research space and you don't, you really should sign up. So Quirk's Marketing Research Review, I had an article in their August 2017 issue, both the online and the print issue on job titles and how job titles in our space are changing, and often because of this increasing intersection. So what we see in a lot of the research, and I've been doing this research, by the way, for 2 years, analyzing actual job postings. So I've analyzed thousands of job postings related to market research and customer insights to show how job titles are changing in our industry, in our profession, and how the skill requirements are changing. So hopefully between all of these different proof points, I have convinced you that we now live in a data fluent world. So if we live in a data fluent world, what do I have to do? If I'm in market research, how do I adjust? What are some things that I absolutely need to learn about in order to be successful in an increasingly data fluent world? Well, last week I pointed out that some good topics to start with are as follows: customer analytics, web analytics, predictive analytics, A/B testing, customer lifetime value analysis, market basket analysis. These are some of the great topics that come up a lot. And even if you just spend an hour on each one using some of the free or low cost resources, just start with the free resources, just spend some time reading. There's no shortage of books, journals, academic journals. Check out Google Scholar. Like, go to Google Scholar and search on customer lifetime value. You'll find great articles there. And of course, there are a lot of experts who talk about these topics online. You can get free videos here on YouTube and other resources. So yeah, you can do more formal training, but even if not that, just to spend a little time getting up to speed so that you're acquainted with the ideas, you're getting acquainted with the different methodologies, that's going to help you when you find yourself in a situation, and if it hasn't happened yet, I promise you it will soon, where you're collaborating with people who know about these things. So if you're increasingly going to be in situations where you're on a cross-functional team or some other type of group that includes people with different data expertise, then it's a good idea to speak their language a little bit, know about what types of things they do commonly work on, and what the relative strengths and weaknesses are. I'm not saying that everybody who's in market research needs to be able to do, say, customer lifetime value analysis. Of course not. But I do think it's absolutely attainable and appropriate to know what it is and to have read some examples of how organizations have used it to their benefit. Now, I talked a little bit about this last week, and somebody sent me a question that I thought was really great. I was asked this question. All right, this all sounds great. I need to learn about some of these new topics. I hear you, Catherine. But what exactly are these data sources that they're working with? So, okay, they're doing customer lifetime value. They're doing customer analytics. They're doing predictive analytics. But on what data? I love this question because, market researchers, we're used to having to basically fetch our own data, right? We go out and we hunt and gather our data by using surveys and focus groups and ethnographies and social media listing, etc. And these types of data sources that are often being leveraged are different, right? These are data sources that are either continuous sources that organizations have access to, it's internal data sources, sometimes it's external data sources. So I totally appreciate the importance of this question. So what kinds of data, outside the data sources we're used to working with, do organizations now have access to? There's a very nice company called ScienceSoft in the software development space that actually put together a very nice diagram on this that I really like, where they basically categorize the types of data that organizations are working with as falling into 5 buckets. Now, what's interesting here is even in this diagram and in their model, there's some bias because the types of data they're talking about, they don't include the types of data market researchers work with. So this is biased towards sort of the big data customer analytics point of view of the world. But the categories of data I think are really great for answering the question. So what types of data do organizations have available to them these days for conducting what is now called big data analysis or predictive analytics and so forth? Well, first of all, a lot of companies have access to transactional data. So transactional data means data about purchases. It could also mean returns, or if I'm a nonprofit, maybe it's donations. But a lot of organizations now have volumes and volumes of transactional data, whether they are, say, an Amazon and you're collecting all of these online sales, so any kind of e-commerce retailer, again, Amazon is a great example. I mean, if you think about your own behavior on Amazon, they have a lot of transactional data. They know about your purchases, the frequency of your purchases, the volume of your purchases, and so on. Second kind of data that most organizations have access to these days is data about service or product use. So imagine you are working at Netflix. Well, you know a lot about how your service is used. You know how many subscribers you have, at what price points. You know how often they are watching different kinds of content. You know how often, you know their behavior by time of day. You know their behavior by day of week. So you have a lot of data about their product use. Also, imagine you're a cell phone company. Again, you know how many calls your customers are making. You know what percent of their volume is for voice calls versus text versus web traffic. So you have a lot of data about how people are using your products and services. Now, not all companies obviously have that information about details about product and service use, but it does come up a lot. And increasingly, those of you especially who are interested in high-tech related topics, there's this concept called Internet of Things, where the idea is there are so many organizations, so many different types of devices these days that are online that are collecting passive data, that is a huge source of data now for a lot of organizations. So you can check out Internet of Things online and check out the kinds of data that different devices are generating these days. How about web behavior data? Another common source of data that organizations collect is web behavior data. Now, this can actually mean a couple of different things. In some cases, it's simply about understanding search traffic. So if I'm in the, I don't know, let's imagine I am in the peanut butter business, I might be looking and analyzing web behavior data to understand what kind of peanut butter people are searching for. Are people searching for different flavors? Well, now there's peanut butters that have protein and other things, other types of things mixed in to amp up the nutritional value. So maybe I want to track how search volume for some of these different topics within the peanut butter space are trending, and whether they're trending, whether people are searching for specific products or or specific brands and so forth. So web behavior data is a very common source of data that I might be collecting. Also, in some cases, I might be actually doing analysis to understanding how people are behaving online in terms of how they're going from different online destinations. So if they start here, do they end there, right? So I want to understand something about their online behavior between points A and points B, so I know perhaps where I need to be promoting my product or services, or how I need to be able to take advantage of existing online behaviors. Another common source of data is data from customer created email. So customers' emails, customer text messages is something that's harvested by a lot of organizations. Now think about it, that's a lot of unstructured data. But in different vertical industries, they actually get a huge amounts of customer email, and organizations do harvest that data for analysis purposes. And I'm going to give you an example of that in just a minute. And then the fifth major category of data is data about social activity. Now, this intersects with something that many of us in market research do, which is, taking advantage of social media research platforms to understand what people are saying about specific brands or product categories online, looking at how those volumes of mentions change over time, and understanding whether or not those mentions are positive or negative. So social media research is something that we do, and it's the one area where you can see intersection in this particular model. So again, those are 5 broad, high-level categories of data that most organizations have access to these days. So again, transactional data, data about service or product use, web behavior data, data from customer emails, and data about social network activity. And either one at a time or in various combinations, those data sources are used to do things like understand customer lifetime value, right? Or to understand customer preferences, or to build profiles of our customers and to understand their life situation. And maybe I'm able to append customer database information so that I can understand, gosh, it looks like I'm getting clues that this group of people are in a retirement phase. Therefore, I'm going to promote my product or service to them with the angle of retirement because I now know that about this group of people. So there's a lot of ways that organizations are harnessing the types of data, but those are the wide variety of data sources available. Now, a lot of this does vary somewhat by vertical industry, so I do want to point something out. This is a great example of vertical industry specific data. So the folks at I for Travel did a survey in 2017. They collected a sample size of 450 respondents. These are all companies that are in the travel industry. And they asked which kinds of data these companies gather and analyze to understand their customers. And what was really interesting is how many different data sources came up. Now, some of these won't be surprising. A lot of organizations, again, they collect a lot of different types of data, but email data was the most common source of data analyzed by these travel companies. So again, you can imagine if you're in the travel business, let's say you are a market research manager at a hotel company, you probably get a lot of emails, and some of them may not be very nice, right? But whether they're customer complaint emails or something else, that is a lot of incoming data, and for some organizations in huge volume that can be analyzed. Of course, there's data from customer relationship management, CRM data. That's where a lot of that transactional data will live for most organizations. Search engine data is also very commonly cited. You've also got proprietary transaction data, so that internal sort of, my own e-commerce kind of purchase, e-commerce behavior data, etc. Digital ad tracking. Well, travel industry. They do a lot of online advertising, so they have a lot of data about what kinds of ads are working and what locations digital ads are generating the highest conversion rates and so forth. A couple other things I want to point out is loyalty program data. And this isn't specific to travel. This happens in a lot of industries where companies have loyalty programs. And if you think about what's in your own wallet or on your keychain, you're probably a member of a number of loyalty programs yourself. And this is a great source of data for organizations to have, because that's where they can really start tracking data over time, longitudinally, if you will, to understand how purchase behavior changes over time in terms of repeat behavior, whether or not purchases are being made in response to specific offers, what specific brands people are buying, price sensitivities, etc. So loyalty program data is another great source of data for many organizations. And another thing that can also come up and be important is geolocation data. And I think that in their survey they said that this was cited by 31% of their respondents. 31% of the respondents to a survey on use of data by companies in the travel industry, that geolocation data is really interesting, because that's really where a lot of companies want to understand how behavior varies by geography. And if I'm in the travel industry, I absolutely am going to want to understand how people from Florida are behaving online, or are purchasing different types of vacations or different types of travel destinations versus, say, people who are from the state of Washington, right? So there's a lot of different things that I can be doing at a very high level, just looking at broad geographical trends, but I can also be looking at really specific geographic activities. So I might want to understand, for example, are people who are at my hotel, and I know that because of their geolocation data, are they engaging with our brand differently than people who are at this other hotel location? So being able to understand, for example, where people are when they're behaving certain ways, that kind of data can really be harvested as well. And again, a lot of these things are going to vary by industry, but I think this is a really great example from the travel industry that there are so many different data sources that are available. So hopefully I've convinced you by now that we live in a data-fluent world and that there are a lot of different data sources. But understand something here. None of these data sources are perfect. So just as survey data is never perfect, as much as I love doing surveys, survey data we know is not perfect. None of these other data sources are perfect either, right? So there are pros and cons to using a lot of different data sources. So for example, I can say that a company would certainly learn a lot about, from harvesting unstructured email data, right? huge amounts of discovery and analysis. But of course, the emails that people are getting, that companies get, are primarily coming from their current customers. So they're not learning a lot about people who aren't their customers from email data. So we just have to understand, what the limitations are of different data sources. Some data sources are better for understanding existing customers. Some data sources may be better for understanding potential customers or new customer groups. Or take again the point about the ad tracking. This is great that organizations have access to so much data about what ads are working and how effective they are. But of course, digital ad tracking is just one part of the equation. There's a lot of non-online ad investment that these organizations are making as well. So there is no single data source that is perfect, but organizations are absolutely moving to understand what all of their data sources are in order to better integrate and harvest them. So it is a changing world for us. I do think that just learning a little bit about different data sources will help those of us who are in market research and customer insights be prepared to be effective in a world where we are increasingly collaborating with people who have other types of data expertise. I hope the conversation about all the different types of data sources that are available to companies kind of gives you some ideas about how to think about different data sources and how your work in market research could intersect with some of these other data sources too. I mean, for your own work, are you working on a project where if you had access to customer emails, would that be helpful to you? Are you working on a project where if you could append your survey data with data from actual purchases, would that be of value to you? Are you working on a project where it might be useful to understand how people are behaving in different geographies, and whether or not they are having specific types of transactions when they're in a specific store? Then maybe some geodata could be of interest to you. So there's a lot of cool things that we can have access to these days. I hope that was helpful for everybody. And for those of you who are students and are interested in learning more, I just want to point out that we have some upcoming courses that are very relevant to this whole topic of living in a data-fluent world. So for those of you who are interested in not only being in a data fluent world and figuring out how to adjust your skills and your knowledge accordingly, if you are interested in this idea of being a data agnostic advisor, if that's a career path that's of interest to you, a couple of the classes we have coming up, we put together as a bundle that are related to this. So we took our course on data fluency and our class on client management skills and created a bundle because we get a lot of clients who take both those classes. So we put them together as a bundle so you can save $100 off that bundle. And that advisory bundle is available at researchrockstar.com. So that's on the training.researchrockstar.com website. And by the way, if you have any colleagues who need to maybe amp up their writing skills, because communication is so important these days, I just want to let you know that there are just 6 spots left in our new writing boot camp. And that's a writing boot camp for market researchers with our amazing Professor Dan. Dan Reynolds is teaching that class, and it's a true hands-on class for people who really need to sort of maybe amp up their writing skills a bit more, have more confidence in their writing. And the reason why I'm so passionate about writing skills in our profession is because one of the things that we're challenged by is that we have to grab people's attention. We're really always being pushed to write short reports that are more concise and add more value. Well, writing well and short is actually really, really hard to do. And so I want to give this course a shout out. So if you find that you have colleagues who maybe their reports would have more impact, they would be doing a better job of writing results in a way or communicating with clients in a way that would really help them have impact, a little investment in some good writing skills can really go a long way. So that course is coming up in April. And again, we just have 6 spots left, but I'd really love to fill that class. If today's conversation has been helpful, please do write a review, give us a like, and subscribe. And the more subscribers I see, the longer I'll keep the conversations going. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.